Hello and welcome to this episode of Chasing Creativity. This is Kiran Mandral. Today I have with me a very dear friend, Neeti Shroff-Shah. Hi Kiran. Lovely to meet you here again after we spent some time together at Bangalore last month. And congratulations on your new book.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
My pleasure. So Neeti, you come from the world of advertising. What made you decide to take the leap and get into the world of writing books?
So this was always where I was going, I think. I think my subconscious mind knew that. When I was 16 or 17, I used to keep saying in college, I used to keep saying when I'm 30, I'm going to be pregnant and I'm going to be writing my first book. Then, of course, life happened, college, got into advertising, got married, moved off to New York for a few years, came back to India, got back to advertising. And then one fine day, I found myself pregnant, writing my first book, and I was 30 and a half.
Wonderful.
So I think it was, I always knew, somewhere I always knew this is where I was going to go, but it was never a thought I had crystallized and, spoken about it to anybody else or to myself all these years, the decades between making that statement and actually doing it.
Are you saying now, sometime or the other, I am going to win a Booker?
No, but I should. I should start saying it. Why not?
Yeah, since you manifested that, you're going to be manifesting something other as well.
Yes. Might as well dream bigger.
Of course. So, advertising and writing books, creativity is involved in both. But they're very different spaces because in advertising, you're catering to the demands of the product, the client servicing, the market research, to all the other factors that go into making an ad. And plus, you have to keep each one happy, keep redoing it 1 million times. In contrast, writing a book is rather self-indulgent. You only have your editor to deal with and then the yes or the no of the audience.
Correct.
The readers after it comes out. When you wrote your first book, coming from a field which is very short form, comparatively, were there any shifts you had to make in your process?
I've been thinking about it a lot. That in the middle, I was thinking, what if I had started writing books earlier? And had not gone down the whole advertising route, but had just started with books. I would have had so many written by now. But it's a silly way to think because there have been such valuable lessons I have learned in advertising. To begin with, it teaches you economy of words. An ad is a trespasser. I believe an ad is a trespasser when you are, it's going to come and interrupt you when you are either scrolling on your phone on Instagram or you're watching a show. It's rude. An ad is rude, because it interrupts. So you've got to be quick. You've got to be funny or entertaining, and you've got to be memorable. So these are such great lessons that you take away into your writing. The other thing is, like you mentioned, there is so much rejection in advertising. As a young copywriter, you are rejected by your boss, by the servicing team, by the strategy planning team, by the client, by the client's boss. So for an idea to go through as is, it's next to impossible in the starting years. And there's so much rejection that you kind of, you know how to deal with it. You know how to not take it personally. So that's something I applied to my books in the sense I don't take it personally when there's a bad review. I'm like, you didn't get it.
You're lost.
Yeah, it was not for you. There are all kinds of readers. My book was not for you. So there's so much of that. Even for, you mentioned the process. Somehow the process of when I used to get an advertising brief, and when you start thinking of a creative solution for that brief, the process has remained startlingly similar. In the sense, you would start off with a problem or a brief or something, and then you would figure out 10 different ways of approaching it. And that's exactly what I do when I begin plotting a book. Start off with who gets killed, and what could be the possible reasons why somebody would be, the motives, So the diagrams that I used to draw for
advertising,
look very similar to what I'm doing with my books right now.
That's very interesting. So you do a sort of a mind mapping kind of a thing?
Yes.
And that's how you work with your books. Okay, we'll come to that a bit later. I'm curious about your first book was about your own personal experiences in the in the Indian matrimonial market, so to speak. So how did that book come about, and what was writing autofiction like?
It was a memoir, and that story needed to be told. I met 40 men before I met my husband, the arranged way. It was, some of those dates were funny, some of them were depressing, some of them were irritating, there were many annoying experiences as well. So it was such a big, those 2 years of looking at boys was such a, it was every Sunday, Kiran. Every other Sunday I was out on a date, an arranged date which my parents had set up and meeting these men. And I needed to get it out of my system. And I think writing was a way for me to work through those, to find perspective, to find it funny, all of that. I look back and at that time it wasn't that funny, but when I look back on it, and writing was a way to get it out of the system. So that was a story that needed to be told.
It got told. And after that, you went to writing fiction.
Yes.
And that was a completely different genre switch, so to speak. I mean, even the process would have been completely different because now you're creating characters, now you're creating situations. Yes. Though most of it is drawn, I think, from real life, from your experiences, from the area in which you live in. So Temple Hill is Malabar Hill.
Temple Hill is Malabar Hill.
So tell us, how did this whole thing come about? Why did you decide, I'm going to write this series, mystery, crime, and not any other genre, so to speak?
Because it's what I love to read.
Okay.
Crime fiction, mysteries. In fact, cozy is a very specific kind of mystery that I like to read, which is the whole golden age traditional mysteries that were made famous by Agatha Christie, Dorothy L. Sayers, all of them, right? So those are what I turn to when I'm in need of comfort, on a holiday, on a rainy day, on any kind of day. Those are what I used to turn to. So when I decided I want to write fiction next, it just seemed, I just was very naturally drawn to writing a mystery. You know how they say, write what you want to read. Mm-hmm. Also, I was very clear that I wanted to write about this world because imagine, I've grown up reading these little mysteries set in these cozy English towns, these villages up in the Scottish Highlands. One of my current favorite reads is a mystery series set in the Quebecois region, in a little village there. And if I find those stories so engrossing, I mean, those worlds are so captivating. I kept thinking that people, someone sitting there would find my little cozy Malabar Hill neighborhood with the gulmohar trees and the nosy neighbors equally interesting. So the world, and you know what they say, write what you know, at least to begin with. Mm-hmm. So I just seemed drawn to that area, and I just know it so intimately, and I'm so fond of that area, and I wanted to base the stories there.
Lovely. So when you began this series, I mean, the Temple Hill series, the first was The Murder of Kirti Kadakia, the second book is just out, A Matrimonial Murder. Did you think you're going to do a one-off, or were you very clear in your head that this is going to be a series?
A series, because most of the series that I read, most of the mysteries that I follow, whether it's Sujata Mase's Parvin Mystery series or the Wasim Khan's Midnight Malabar House series, they're all a series. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how I imagined. Like when I wrote Death of Kirti Kadakia, I already had an idea for the idea where this one was going to be set. And right now I'm working on a book set in a school, and I already know what the fourth one's going to be. Okay. So I already know that, I want Radhi, my protagonist, I want her to have an arc. And that arc will be, to do full justice to that arc, I need a whole set of books where she's solving cases, and that world lends itself to so many interesting spaces, like now the next one's at a very prestigious school on Temple Hill. So
all aspects of Temple Hill will be
covered,
explored,
hopefully.
So when you write a series, the characters definitely have an arc, but sometimes because of the nature of the genre and because it's a series, there needs to be a certain continuum maintained. So sometimes those can be conflicting with each other because, the character needs to stay the same to be familiar to the reader, but yet the character has to grow.
Yes.
So have you faced that challenge so far? You're 2 books down, you're working on your 3rd one, but have you faced that, and how do you deal with that if you have?
So it's always a balancing act of how much to keep, how much for the character needs to be constant, but like you said, it needs to grow. So for instance, Radhi deals with anxiety issues.
Mm-hmm.
And in book 1, we are introduced to this problem. In book 2, we learn the cause of the problem.
Okay.
In book 3, she's moving forward to a solution to that problem.
Okay.
So she is growing, but it's still very related to where the book starts. And hopefully by book 4, she will have turned a new page and sort of, she'll have other problems, And as do we, right? As, different phases of life, and we are tackling different situations. So I don't think that part was that much of a problem, making her grow. The challenge which I faced with book 1 versus book 2 is how much of backstory is enough. Meaning that's a balancing act, right? Because you are going to be dealing with 2 kinds of readers. There are some who are going to come to your book brand new and they need to be introduced to the characters in the world. But there are some who are picking up the second one and they don't want to be bored.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always a
That's
challenge.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, how does your day look like? How is your writing process? Do you have fixed hours that you work? Do you need to be shut up in your room and, not take knocks, calls, anything? Or can you work in the middle of chaos?
So mornings, I'm a morning person. So my mornings are very precious. I guard them. Yeah. Like one mama bear or something.
Yeah, like a dragon over the gold.
Yeah, this is like these few hours when I've just had a cup of tea and I'm buzzing. I want to tackle the new writing in that part of the day. You know how it is with writers, the processes are generally evolving, but this much now I do know that guard that time of day well, and then, that bears fruit. I keep my phone away in a different room under a pillow, silent, where I can't find it. If because it's otherwise I'm tempted to go keep checking. So social media needs to be away. I write on my laptop. I know a lot of people prefer to write by hand, so I'm writing on my laptop. So there's always the danger of all the tabs open, but it's something I'm maneuvering my way through. So that's then. Once that part of the morning is done, then then one is king of the day. One can do what one wants, answer emails, calls, all the calls that are scheduled.
Administrative work of being a writer.
All of that. The marketing. Kiran, marketing has become such a big part of being a writer. So all of that. And then I have a young daughter. So I give a significant chunk of my evening time to her. So.
You just spoke about marketing becoming such an important part of a writer's duties, job responsibilities, KRA, whatever. It was never like that earlier.
Yeah.
Writers were lucky to be left alone. Nobody even knew what they looked like. Now you're supposed to have your mugshot everywhere. You're supposed to have your book and your own mugshot everywhere. You're supposed to be at places. You're supposed to be talking about your book. You're supposed to be doing so much. Writers are not extroverted people. How do you balance this dichotomy?
I just, in fact, wrote a whole thing on LinkedIn about this.
Okay.
Because it's such a dilemma. Because writers chose this profession because we prefer the people in our head. Talking to the people in our head. I prefer it.
Did you hear the Fredrik Backman speech?
Yeah. I'm a fangirl of Fredrik Backman. So I hear everything by him. So exactly, right? So that's the reason we chose this job, so that we could be insulated from the world. Too much of going out and meeting, it hampers my creativity. Too much of it. I do like parts of it, and I think as I am beginning to understand my own writing process more, I have realized that I also draw a lot from my interactions with the world outside. So now I don't complain as much. Earlier, I would crib about, because I have a large family on both sides, and also friend circle, because both of us are born and brought up here. So huge friend circle, family. So there's always so much happening that I would crib about the socializing aspect of my life. But now I've come to understand that I'm drawing so much from that. So, but how do I balance it? I don't know. Every day is a new day. Some days I feel I've squandered because I've just sat and done Instagram posts. I feel that the day's been squandered because that writing those little posts, if you want to do it with any kind of meaning and with any kind of honesty, it takes time. Takes time to do it. So every day is a new day. I think everybody I speak to is struggling with it.
Everyone's struggling with it. Everyone's struggling to find the right balance. And some like me are going back in their cave. But having said that, because you're writing murder mysteries and you're writing crime thrillers, there is a need to plot it. You can't be an organic writer and see where the character goes and okay, maybe she dies, maybe she doesn't die, maybe this happens at the end. We'll see what happens at the end. So how does your plotting happen? Do you do it on a software? Do you do it by hand? Do you do this reassociation thinking and, thought circles? What is your process like?
So it's by hand. I like to work in big journals where I'm drawing these maps and seeing what are the possible motives people could have. Who are the kind of characters that are organic to the world I'm building at that moment. Also, like you said, because we are planting clues and red herrings and alibis, and if you want a tight mystery, then plotting is important, where it has to be satisfying at the end for the reader, where every thread that you've introduced needs to be tied up neatly. I've read mysteries which are not that tightly plotted, where certain reactions and certain actions of characters haven't been explained in the end, and you feel a bit cheated as a reader if you're reading it closely. So I do believe that tight plotting is required. However, it's difficult to see that far into the distance. So, think of it like a car with a headlight where you can see parts of it. I plot mota, I do it in any case. Like the bigger picture, I already know who's dying and who's killed and why. All that you already know. But the minute little details, you can only see up till this much, and then you go ahead and plot that. And then when you reach that, you can see ahead. And then that's how I plot multiple times, in the journey.
What about research? How much of a part does research play in your books?
So because I'm writing about the here and now, unlike writing a historical mystery, I'm pretty familiar with the way that this part, the world is functioning at this moment. Like I don't need to go and research how things were in the 1960s. However, sometimes my character is passing by a building and I want to know what kind of Art Deco style this was and some trivia about that. So I'll go and read up on that. Right now, the book I'm currently working on is set in a school. So I've spoken to so many teachers just to understand what their day-to-day schedule looks like. Because your interactions with schools, as a student, or now my daughter's in school, so as a parent. But what does it look like from the inside? What are some of the politics that the staff face in the staff room? So I'm talking to people. So a lot of phone conversations, yes, but a lot of research on murder methods, because that's something you don't know.
I swear, if somebody goes to our search history, they're going to
my tab sometimes. Initially, my husband would pass me by. He's like, "What are you reading? What are you reading?"
Yeah.
Every single time. Now he's given up.
Yeah, they'll just put us in some mental asylum or something, like danger to society.
Yeah, or worse, investigate us. Like, what are you planning
next year?
Yeah,
how best to murder your husband. So, because there is this specific genre that you're working in and you have a series going on, are you ever tempted to look at another genre of writing?
Yes, very much. I love reading litfic. Okay. Over the last decade or so, mysteries are now just 30% of my reading. 70% is litfic. And it's a genre I am drawn to quite a lot. So I do want to write litfic. In fact, I might take a break and write that. I don't know.
Okay.
Because it really calls to me. And I, when I was writing the third one, half my mind is there. I have an idea already which I want to explore, but I'm like, no, let me finish my 3 books, because then that's a solid series.
Okay.
And then maybe do a lit fic and then come back to this. So lit fic is definitely.
That was my next question. Do you work a single book at a time, or do you work multiple?
I am currently working only on one book, but I keep hearing of these writers who can. I mean, I know you are someone who juggles between projects, and I think that's fascinating. And I want
to do something.
It's not recommended. With 16 books under your belt, I think I can say it's recommended, Kiran. So it's something I want to explore.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for that, the things you're writing have to be quite disparate.
They have to be very different.
Yeah. Then then you can sort of come out of one world and go into another.
So if you're writing a non-fiction and a fiction, or if you're writing a comic mystery and an intense horror,
yes,
then it works.
Yes.
Yeah. So maybe you can do your lit fic and your comic mystery, your
something
cozy mystery, at the same time.
Something like that.
When you create your characters, I mean, we are like magpies as authors. We are like cannibalizing from everybody's lives. Are you very careful to camouflage the real people?
You have to be.
Have you ever been caught out?
No. I think most of my characters are, what's it called when they're...
composites.
Composites, yes. So they're composites of people I've known, in the world. So nobody is very identifiable. Like I used to have this neighbor who would call me every day at 10, 11 in the morning, which was my writing time, to check if the maid has come, because we had the same maid, and how the maid's mood was. And it used to tickle me to no end, because the first few times she did it, I gave her a straight answer. I said, she seems okay to me. She doesn't,
I'm so bothered about the maid's mood.
She would ask me, mood came che? I said, is she in a good, is she cheerful? I said,
the maid has to be bothered about your mood, not vice versa.
And then if I indulged that conversation, we would get into the specifics of what her mood was like the day prior and what she anticipates the mood's going to be today.
Oh,
so now these are things they're gold, right? I'm going to use them someday.
Of course,
somewhere.
you would mind them, of course.
Yeah, but I will do it skillfully.
You will do it skillfully. So, I did a book recently called Rising 2.0. And in that, one of the women I wrote about was Kamala Das, who spoke about how, as a writer, her writing time was the time when her duties were done as a mother and a wife. In the previous book, I wrote about Kiran Desai, who said the same thing, that her children didn't even know she was a writer, because she would write when they went to school and pack up when they came back from school, and not write, just do her first draft, like her outlines or first drafts during the summer vacation.
Wow.
So for women writers, there's always this tug. And you have a little daughter, you have a young daughter, you have a family, you have an extensive, extended family, plus social life, as you say. Whereas for a writer, that compulsion to be alone and to write and to be left alone and not to be intruded on is such a difficult ask. I read somewhere about a writer, I forget whether it's Ishiguro or I forget who it was. I think it was The Remains of the Day that he wrote, or some other book, or I don't know the exact writer. But he said that he wrote the book in a span of X number of days, not stepping out of his room, his wife delivering his meals on a tray to his room. And I keep thinking, I need a wife. Do you feel that frustration sometimes?
Oh, all the time. I think, especially in the beginning, when I didn't have clear-cut boundaries, when my boundaries were still shaky enough that, if I'm working, the help would come in and not think twice about asking me, wo salad bola tha, wo circle kaatna hai ya lamba kaatna hai? I said, jaise kaatna hai, kaatu, don't, So those sort of questions, now I have sort of been a little more emphatic with stating my boundaries. And I refuse to constantly feel guilty about doing it, because I think in the initial stages, I struggled a lot with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
That if I'm not focused on something in the house or on my child, or because I'm choosing to give my writing priority for that 1 hour, 2 hours, there was some amount of guilt attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if my parents are calling me and said, we haven't seen you for so long, and I know if I go there, then that's half my writing morning gone. So if I'm not going, there was guilt attached to it. But I think as I am growing as a writer, I have just decided to take my job seriously. Like, if my husband's in a meeting, he won't take my calls, right? So similarly, I keep my phone away now. And I said, I choose to do this. I've made a choice where I'm giving this utmost importance, and I'm not going to be guilty about it. And this is precious, good work that I'm doing. And I refuse to constantly feel torn about it now. I mean, I do feel it, but I stop myself. I said, no, this is important. It's okay to say no to the demands of the outer world.
Wonderful. And now you're writing your third book, or is it completed?
No, writing.
Writing.
Yeah.
How has the response been to A Matrimonial Murder?
Touch wood, it's been lovely so far. With this book, I don't know if I was telling you, but the endorsements that I've got for this book, all these names were on my wish list for the first one.
Uh-huh.
With Sujata Mase and Wasim Khan, and these names were on my wish list for the first one. And now I've got all the endorsements for this one. So it's been lovely. The early reviews have started coming in. They've all been so generous. So I'm quite encouraged, actually. It's coming at a good time, because, when you're in the middle of writing the next one, and when people call up and say that they've really enjoyed this, it sort of kind of spurs you on to do better.
Lovely. All the very best for this book, Preeti. Thank you so much for taking time out for this.
Thank you for having me.